Achilles begins his rampage, slaughtering Trojans mercilessly, seeking his promised glory as fast as he can. But what about us? Is there anything that we can do to avoid dying in obscurity without fighting and killing everyone around us? Turns out, there is another way. Hello and welcome or welcome back. Today we are reading the Great Books of Western Civilization, beginning with the Iliad. As always, I'm using the Robert Fagles translation. This is Book 20. We'll begin with a synopsis, then go into analysis and commentary. Zeus calls all of the gods together for a council on Olympus, and then commands them all to pick a side, the Greeks or the Trojans, and go to fight as fiercely and as much for that side as they desire. If the gods are not intervening in the battle to come, he says, Achilles will easily defeat the entire Trojan army and burn the whole city down against the will of fate. So as Achilles charges at the Trojans with all of the Greek forces behind him, the gods descend from Olympus, picking one side or the other, charging alongside the fighters. Zeus starts a thunderstorm as Poseidon begins earthquakes. The gods all pair off, preparing to fight each other. Apollo with Poseidon, Ares with Athena, and Scamander with Hephaestus. Achilles seeks Hector, but finds Aeneas ready to confront him instead. The gods stop their fighting and watch, ready to intervene if necessary. Achilles mocks Aeneas' low birth, and then they begin to fight. Poseidon speaks up, expressing the pity that he feels for Aeneas. Apollo put him up to fighting Achilles with no real plan for how to get him out of there. Poseidon also shares that Aeneas is fated to survive the Trojan War, as his descendants are meant to rule the Trojans in the years to come. So Poseidon pulls Aeneas away, and then Achilles goes back to looking for Hector, slaughtering Trojan soldiers on his way there, killing them with over-the-top ferocity and almost unnecessary violence. Hector confronts Achilles partway through his rampage, but now Apollo steps in to save Hector from Achilles. Achilles promises that the next time they meet, no one will be able to save him. He then continues his onslaught. Achilles finally unleashes his fury upon the battlefield, and it's really something to see. Knox comments that this display of violence makes all of the battles before look like child's play. Achilles' abilities, strength, and speed are completely unmatched. Everything he does stretches the limits of human ability. Achilles hurled his spear, struck the shield of Aeneas, straight through the Pelian ash burst. Aeneas crouched, terrified as the shaft shot past his back, hurled so hard it plunged deep in the ground, even after it tore up 2 round plies of the shield. Similarly, in the next chapter, we see somebody else getting killed because they try to pull Achilles' spear from the ground, and they can't. Here in Book 20, we see him splitting skulls in half, spearing people, and cutting off their heads, but it's all done very quickly, with no struggle, really, at all. No one really puts up a fight, and he goes through them like butter. He kills 14 soldiers in this chapter alone, which is higher than any other single fighter we've seen so far. And in the next chapter, Homer stops counting, because there's just too many. Somehow, despite all of the battles and violence and killing we've seen in the chapters before this, Homer has found a way to make this particular chapter, this particular rampage of Achilles, seem especially terrifying, especially violent. Homer also emphasizes Achilles' godlikeness with a subtle, formulaic device. Let me explain. So Achilles goes after Hector, and Apollo saves him. So we get treated to a few lines of verse that we've seen multiple times before, in both other times when Apollo was stopping a fighter from doing something. 3 times the brilliant runner Achilles charged him, lunged with his bronze spear. Then, at Achilles' 4th assault, like something superhuman, his terrifying voice burst out in winging words. That was different. Normally, it's the god, Apollo, who screams out in a terrifying voice to stop the fighter from doing whatever they're going to do, and warns of their impending death if they do it. That's what happened with Diomedes, and it's also what happened with Patroclus. Homer took a familiar poetic formula from 2 very memorable parts of the story and flipped the script such that Achilles was the god screaming out words of warning and terror against some mortal who had offended him. It's so subtle, yet so clever. We don't know for sure whether the Iliad was composed by one person or not. All real evidence seems to indicate that it wasn't, and yet it's so cohesive as a whole because of details like this that you gotta wonder, maybe it was. Aeneas initially does not want to fight Achilles, but Apollo goads him into it by reminding him that his own mother is a goddess, and a greater goddess than Thetis, so in terms of inherited power, Aeneas should be stronger. He confronts Achilles, leading to a thought-provoking exchange. Aeneas, does your courage really drive you to challenge me, in hopes of ruling your stallion-breaking friends and filling Priam's throne? Even if you killed me, would Priam drop his crown in your hands? The king has sons. He's sound of limb, no half-wit either. He's trying to understand Aeneas' motivations for fighting him in terms of the seeking of glory, and points out that the amount of glory that you can win is, in some sense, limited by your place, by your birth. And he's kind of right. Killing Achilles should earn you nothing less than a kingship. But Priam will not defraud his sons, nor give Aeneas so much honor that he dethrones himself. In fact, we already know that Priam is very careful about honoring other people more than his family. Deiphobus went for Aeneas, found him out on the flank and fringe of battle, standing idle, forever angered at Priam, who always scrimped his honors, brave as Aeneas was among the Trojan fighters. Killing Achilles sort of isn't worth it for Aeneas, because he won't earn from it what he ought to. It's like being overqualified for a job. You don't get hired because your expertise and/or experience makes your just wage much higher than the company can afford. Or there's already someone doing the job that you would be the best fit for. This is a hard truth that Achilles knows all too well from his own life. He was one half turn of a Rubik's Cube away from being the king of the gods. And that one half turn, immortality, was denied him because of his birth. However, Achilles' power in battle does not come from his birth as such, but rather from the convergence of several prophecies at once, from fate, divine providence, if you will. To remind you, these prophecies are: Zeus will someday be overthrown by his own son. The son of Thetis will surpass his father in power. Achilles will either die young in battle, earning glory, or will die with none after a long, peaceful life. Although Aeneas' birth is more noble than we would suppose, he and Priam actually share an ancestor, this providence, this fate, has plans for Aeneas as well, and they are what enable him to survive his encounter with Achilles. Poseidon reveals to us what Aeneas is expected to do. He is destined to survive. Aeneas will rule the men of Troy in power, his sons, and the sons born in future years. So Aeneas is not destined to gain glory in battle by his prowess, although he does have that as well. Instead, he is to gain glory by fathering the next line of kings, and that in itself merits eternal glory. Aeneas and Achilles can be seen as foils of each other because of this. They are both snubbed of their due honors by their superiors, and the gods have plans to glorify them in the place of that. Achilles, given a choice, chose to do this through works of war. Aeneas' fate, on the other hand, might have been Achilles' other choice. Achilles could have just gone home and lived out his years. While that sounds boring, we know that he probably would have gotten a wife. He would have had more children. And in time, what might those children have done? Who knows how much the family of Achilles could accomplish? I'm proposing this because eventually I plan to read on this channel the Iliad by the Roman poet Virgil. The Iliad tells the story of Aeneas as he flees the fall of Troy, and he eventually becomes the progenitor of the entire Roman Empire. Doesn't that also gain you eternal glory? This is the choice that we all have to make in our lives. How will you make your mark on the world? How will you gain eternal glory as compensation for your short life? Achilles gives us one answer. You can use the gifts of your mind, your body, your will to outfight everyone around you and prove your superiority, or even use your gifts to do good for others around you. It doesn't have to be antagonistic, all in the hope that you make an impact so great that it lasts forever. But Aeneas is the other answer. You can have a family. You can help raise the next generation of humanity and teach them to do good. And they, in turn, will do the same for their children. Bringing even one child into the world causes you to eventually bring generations of them into existence. You have opened up so many more opportunities for people to do good in the world than existed before by that one act. That can also change the world, especially over time, and it's how 99% of us will. In fact, those of you who have children are changing the world like this, whether you intended to by that or not. So, which path is better? Aeneas or Achilles? Which will be remembered longer? Homer's Iliad or the Roman Empire? We're still waiting. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. Always really appreciate it. And if you learned something new today or found something especially interesting, please leave a comment and let me know what it was. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.